Boom, we are pre-recorded, ladies and gentlemen. We have one of the guests that the Bear family asked for, John Carvalho. He is the CCO for BitRefill and is also working on a project called Spectrum. John, how are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
It's a wonderful day in the Costa Rican jungle. I'm glad to have you here. Let's start off with some simple questions. Tell us how you ended up in the Bitcoin and blockchain space, and I guess, the first few steps that and how you stumbled into here.
Sure. I don't know the exact thing that got me to look into Bitcoin, but I think it was when they started posting articles about how you could buy drugs online with Bitcoin. And so I started looking into it and researching, like, what is this Bitcoin thing? I got a little bit of Bitcoin, and once I started reading about it and participating in the forums and everything, it was just like a rabbit hole that I never stopped falling down. So basically, it just consumed me, and I started, hanging out in IRC chat rooms and forums, and eventually now Twitter, and just staying part of the community. I mined for a while. I did pretty much anything you could think of that you can do in Bitcoin. I've been here for 6, 7 years now. I've had a lot of different experiences. I've been through a lot of the price waves and all the different monumental events of good and bad things that have happened to Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's a wild ride. I mean, even hearing the three letters IRC kind of gives me a momentary flashback to the days, back to the day. So now, one of the first times I saw your face is actually with an interview that you had done with Roger Ver. For those of you that don't remember this one, you did a class job of making Roger Ver freak out. Is a spectacular moment, I think, in the Bitcoin and blockchain history that will be recorded forever. Now, that's kind of how I recognized you. Tell us a little bit about BitRefill and Spectrum and some of the ways, I mean, that probably a bunch of other people recognize your work.
Sure. BitRefill is my main thing. I work there as the CCO, doing communications, marketing, PR, some business development stuff. And BitRefill is basically a company that helps people live on crypto. What we mean by that is that we give you ways to use your Bitcoin. So you can buy gift cards, you can buy mobile refills, you can pay various bills just using Bitcoin and some other altcoins. We also provide Lightning networking services. So if you want to be able to try Lightning Network or use it as a business, we have various products that you can use to make it easier. This means that as a business, you can integrate our Thor API, so you can have Lightning capabilities in your platform and make them have less friction and be easier to use for people. We also uh, have the Spectrum project, but this isn't really so much a BitRefill thing as something that I'm involved with through BitRefill, and it pre-exists under the RGB name. This is something that Giacomo Zucco and some other people had put work into, Alikos Follini at Blockstream, etc. And it got revived last summer when we started discussing the ideas of having tokens be possible on the Lightning Network. So now the Spectrum is kind of the name for the Lightning Network aspect of the RGB token project. And so there's a whole team now of people that have been hired by independent businesses working together to have developers create a protocol for being able to create and transfer tokens on Bitcoin and on Lightning.
Well, that sounds fascinating. I mean, the only project I'd seen it was trying to do over on the top of the chain was Risk, or the RSK company. Can you tell us a little bit? I mean, I'm not super tech savvy, John. I mean, I get conceptual stuff really well. Can you give us a little bit of insight into how the Lightning Network is performing and some of the pros and cons that you currently see, at least with where we are today?
It's performing pretty well. I think that right now it's a subset of Bitcoin where there are the people that know about Bitcoin and care about Bitcoin that either want to try it and be able to transact instantly or do high frequency transactions for lower cost. So the network is growing, but it grows at about the size of Bitcoin. I think once maybe the fees or the blocks are full more often and the fees are higher, that maybe more people will migrate from Bitcoin proper to the second layer to be able to transact in smaller amounts. But right now, it still has a lot of growing to do. The user base is still small relative to Bitcoin. It's about the size of an altcoin. Just to put it in perspective, like as a business, when we accept payment methods, Lightning is just as much or more a payment method of chosen by our customers as Ethereum or any other altcoin. But it's notable that it's subset and that it's still performing just as well as the biggest altcoin. But over time, I think that the technology, the aspects of the technology they can add to make it easier to use and have less explanation required for users, I think all of that is coming into play over the next year or two, and that things will just continue to get better and better, and more people use it. I think that it presents an interesting new paradigm for Bitcoin in commerce, because in the old days, everybody said that Bitcoin was fast and cheap and a good way to do payments, and everybody tried to get their mom and pop shop to accept Bitcoin and their local pizza place to accept Bitcoin, and BitPay was a big deal. And then that all kind of fell away when companies kind of realized that Bitcoin isn't necessarily ideal for payments in a retail situation and a commerce situation. So now the Lightning Network is helping to relieve that. So now, customers can pay instantly, and businesses can receive the money instantly. And this is something that Lightning enables.
Just out of curiosity, before I want to dive back into some of the questions for Bit Refill, but are there characterized risks with I mean, again, this is a fairly contentious debate to some degree, I know, from either side, about those who are for or against the Lightning Network. But in your particular viewpoint, does it add more risk to the chain by having these secondary solutions running on top, or is the security equal, or as, I guess?
So I'll comment that in two ways, I guess. There's no real such thing as for or against the Lightning Network. There's only people that are against it because they see it as competition, or they want to have some reason to say something bad about Bitcoin. Like, there's no reason to be for or against a technology that is inevitable. Like, you can't stop. Nobody can decide, okay, Lightning is bad, let's not do it, just because they don't like it or they're against it. So there's not really, I think that paradigm is a mistake. It's a narrative that the people that want to cause FUD get people to believe that there is a for and against. There's no real for and against situation with Lightning. To go further with that, you asked if it's a threat to the Bitcoin network. Well, the thing about software is, on one hand, it doesn't matter. Like I said, like, you can't stop people from making, multi-signature schemes to be able to make channels on top of Bitcoin. It's not something you can stop. So worrying that it's like some kind of systemic risk is kind of the opposite of what you should be doing when it comes to Lightning, because Lightning really is literally demonstrating how you can do things on top of blockchain with less risk. So it enables you to do something experimental offside of the base layer of Bitcoin, so you don't have to compromise or put at risk the foundational aspect of everybody's money and value that's stored in Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's fair. So diving back to Bitrefill, would you consider, I mean, and this is, again, remember, I'm a layman when it comes to technical stuff and coding. Would you consider Bitrefill a second layer type of solution for the way Bitcoin operates, or is it mostly just a graphical and user solution?
No and yes. I would say technically no, it's inaccurate to call Bitrefill itself a second layer, or any of our platform a second layer, but it is the alternative to the second layer. So in other words, before we had Lightning, we had a second layer of Bitcoin, which is basically custodial Bitcoin, where people would deposit their Bitcoin with a trusted party, and then they'd have more utility with that trusted party. So like, if you had your Bitcoin in an exchange, you might be able to move it instantly to another exchange because of trusted setups, or another user on the exchange because it's trusted. So you can do it off chain. So Lightning kind of takes that paradigm and adds more. It removes risk, basically. It makes you have to use less trust to be able to use Bitcoin. So instead of like leaving all of your Bitcoin on an exchange for convenience, you could actually just hold it in Lightning. And then if you wanted to deposit on an exchange instantly, if the exchange supports Lightning, you can instantly send your Bitcoin there. So it kind of changes the paradigm to require less custodial Bitcoin in general. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay. And now I wanted to ask a few questions about the gift cards and the retail options that you guys have been communicating, or I guess the companies that you've been working with. What's the regulations like around the world for being able to offer Bitcoin into fiat? Does it change depending on these cards that you're able to work with, and some of the brands that you've been able to connect with as well?
Um, Generally speaking, we're not technically the same as an exchange. So we're not helping people convert their Bitcoin into fiat or exchange currency in that sense. What we do is we sell products, and just like any business that sells gift cards. So right now, the regulatory landscape, which obviously varies by country, but generally across the world, businesses are allowed to sell gift card credits, gift certificates, credit in their company, and it's not seen as any kind of security or something that is heavily regulated the same way that an exchange might be or a money transfer business might be. Because ultimately, these people have to buy an actual product. They either have to show up and pick it up, or they have to have it delivered to their location. So there's a lot of information. It's hard to do these kinds of things anonymously, and it's not the most useful way to try to do something like money laundering or that kind of thing. So the regulatory setup is not the same as an exchange, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's fair. So I have some notes here written down that you guys had raised around $2 million in your some of your seed rounds last year. How's it been going working with investors, and what's the general, I guess, atmosphere around investing in these? These graphical front ends for users, and I guess not second layer solutions, but I guess add-ons for the Bitcoin protocol.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was only minimally involved in the fundraising specific for BitRefill. They had started it before I joined the company, and they finished about 6 months after I joined the company. But I know it was a lot of work. It takes a lot of effort to try to match, investors looking for the right type of investment. You're competing as an investment with Bitcoin itself, so you're basically trying to show that you can outpace the appreciation of Bitcoin to people who might believe in Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies, and then you're trying to actually communicate your product and have a good plan that people are confident that they can invest in. So it was a lot of work, a lot of pitching, a lot of pitch decks. We used various methods to be able to get the investment money, but in the end, we got what we needed for the short term, maybe a little more than the short term, and now we're just focused on expansion. So we're expanding globally. We're adding hundreds of gift cards in different countries. Just recently, we added Russia as one of our supported countries. So we have Russian language translation in the platform. We have more than 100 new gift cards available specific for the Russian market, et cetera.
And what type of traffic are you guys getting, or what's the customer turnover rate in general of new signups or new new memberships?
We don't share specific data about customers and sales, but I'll tell you that generally, comparatively, that all year since I joined in December, that the growth has been dramatic. Every month we're growing a significant percentage, both in revenue and in users. The overall retention is improving each month, so the amount of times people come back and buy, and the size of orders is improving. So overall, all the metrics are looking very healthy as far as the sales and marketing and traffic aspects.
Well, that's always a good sign. And what about future products? Are you guys looking at adding any I guess new ideas or new deliverables to the community?
We on the obvious side, to people that know us, we do intend to continue to add more Lightning Network related services. We have this product line called Thor, where basically we provide services specific to being able to use Lightning. So you can open channels with us, you can choose your capacity, you can open instant channels, which are instantly spendable, called Turbo, and you can also pay to any endpoint on the Lightning Network using our recharge service. So we'll have more Lightning related services for sure. We're definitely going to be adding a lot of different gift cards as we've been doing already, but we do have some other product lines and other areas of business we're looking at getting into, but it's not anything I can share publicly. We're meeting in a couple of weeks, having a big company meeting where everybody's getting together for about 2 weeks to kind of sync up. We do this twice a year, so we'll have our updated strategy after that, and hopefully in the winter season you'll see what we chose and what path we chose for new product lines or new areas of business that we might get into.
Nice. And so with all this conversation about Lightning Network, how far away do you feel, I guess we are as a community from adopting some of this stuff? And I guess in this, also in the same line of sentiment, what do you feel, I mean, again, I don't know much about tech, so you have to excuse me if I say something that sounds ridiculous, but what about something, how does atomic swaps and the Lightning Network come together? Is there a relationship between these two at all?
There is already a relationship, and there's nothing stopping that capability. Do I think it will be an important thing? I'm not sure. Atomic swaps basically are just a way to trustlessly change assets across blockchains. So if I wanted to send you, one Litecoin for for the same USD value in Bitcoin, we could use atomic swaps to be able to do this in a trustless manner. The problem is that there aren't other blockchains that people are really using a lot of that are in high demand to be able to do atomic swaps for Bitcoin. So yes, the Lightning Network exists, and there's even a company that's working, I think they're called Spark Swap, and maybe some others too, that are enabling atomic swapping between Litecoin and Bitcoin, and trying to make this happen over the Lightning Network. But I don't know how popular it will be. It'll be hard to tell, because right now we're more focused on just making sure that everybody can use the Lightning Network on Bitcoin reliably, and take advantage of these new transaction properties, being faster and cheaper than Bitcoin at the base layer. So I don't really know how long it will be before something like atomic swaps for altcoins are an important thing, and how that will help shape the infrastructure of the kind of blockchain ecosystem.
Yeah, it's a topic that I find very fascinating, because for me, at least the philosophical concept of distribution and just as a very simple concept, distributed ideas are significantly stronger than centralized ideas. I mean, if you've ever read any Nassim Taleb's books or listened to his work, he talks at nauseum about the importance of having distributed layers, because they're significantly stronger. So I've always imagined that we would have multiple variations of currency. And I like the consumer choice too. I always feel it's awkward when Bitcoin maximalists, and look, I think Bitcoin's taking over the one of the main channels of the monetary remittance layers. But I've always been confused, because if you have just one system, we still have then no choice. I always loved that Bitcoin was a consumer choice. It's like if I want to use a Canon camera, or maybe I want to use a Sigma lens on my Canon camera, I can mix these ideas together, and there's no argument between the two. I think that I've always been fascinated by this concept, because I think you need the choice for it to actually really fill out the philosophical concept that Bitcoin, at least in my mind, had entered the scene with. One of the reasons why I bought it when it was so cheap is because I found like a Bitcoin postcard on the ground in Guatemala in an indigenous community. It's like, oh, this is money that we get to choose for the first time, instead of the government saying, oh, this is what we're telling you to use. And that is a pure philosophical concept to me, is so high that I've always been confused why the maximalists argue against things like Litecoin, when it's beneficial for the system to have so many extra tokens. So atomic swaps has always been something that's interested me for my understanding of the philosophy. So I don't want to dive into my thoughts too much, but
let me respond on that a little bit, because it touches on kind of the heart of the Bitcoin maximalist argument, and the altcoiner apologist argument, but you can look at it both ways, and there's a reason why people argue both sides, and you're not wrong. But the thing of it is that the reason why maximalists, and the reason why people kind of generally discourage altcoins as a concept, or as part of something that is natural or good for the ecosystem, is because when you have a decentralized money, the most decentralized money is going to be the most safe. and then every other decentralized money is going to be a spectrum on a smaller shade of the spectrum. So it's going to be less decentralized, less safe, less predictable, more risky. So conceptually, you don't really want more than one blockchain to use as a store of value, because all the other ones are just kind of like acting as inflationary, higher risk mediums of exchange instead of kind of pretending to be stores of value. And over time, what happens is it becomes harder and harder for most of the coins to be able to compete. So you might be right in that there may be social, competitive, or even geographic reasons why multiple blockchains can thrive, and why we may always see more than one. I don't think all the altcoins are going to die in my lifetime. That's for sure. But I don't know that the reasons are going to be highly logical or highly rational. The reasons just strictly be people like to have an alternative. So there's always going to be people that take the contrary blockchain choice to Bitcoin. And so just for that reason alone, there may be a social aspect to money where it's impossible to have one money, because what you have is competition. And smaller monies, smaller blockchains, they're not really much different than a government issued fiat. They're basically a small community of people that have organized to be able to have a way of tracking value and storing and transmitting it. And the smaller that community is, the more power they have to govern it. The more governance that coin has, the more like their own sovereign nation they behave. And so it becomes like, okay, do we really need every country having its own currency, every culture having its own currency? And at what point is this like just completely unsustainable and people just stop playing games and just focus on, maybe one or three coins?
Yeah, the municipal the choice, I think, is one of the fascinating topics, because we are dealing with the humans here, right? If you remove us from the equation, the technology becomes worthless, because the value prospect is from each of our individual perceptions, and the municipal conversation around governance and the control of their money. I've always felt that we are going to go back to a place where you would have, I mean, I'm not from the United States, but the prime example is something like California was years ahead, or could have been years ahead, in their legislation for marijuana and the hemp industry. But because they had this overarching federal centralization, which they had to then bend to, that their municipal power and their community choice was basically washed away. And I feel that's going to be one of the parts that I think empowers us to be a bit more connected as we grow, is the fact that we have the choice to make these abstract decisions. Great point, though. I'm glad we dived into that. We're rolling up near around the 30 minute mark. Is there anything you want to leave us out with? I like to keep the podcast somewhat short some days, but what do you see I guess in the future for bit refill, and just in general, what do you think over the next 5 years we're looking at here? Not price movements, but just technology adoption, and what are some of the things that maybe stand in our way from getting there?
That's a lot of questions mixed together. Let's see. In the next 5 years, well, we're going to have the next halving. I know that you didn't want to really talk about price specifically, but the amount of Bitcoin being created, getting cut in half, is a significant event to the Bitcoin world. And so I think that we'll see the effects of that next year. Either before and or after the actual halving. And then 5 years, you're including a whole another halving. So we're going to see two halvings in the next 5 years. So I think that each halving, as long as Bitcoin is healthy, and at least has some amount of growth each year in the amount of people that are holding it to store value, that will cause significant waves again. So I think we'll probably see two more price waves in that time, which will bring further adoption. And I think that each wave kind of brings a larger echo of the previous wave. So like during the last bull run, we had, stories about how people in countries that had really poorly performing fiat currencies were really starting to notice Bitcoin. So Argentina and Venezuela. And so I think during the next bull run, we'll see more news like that, except it'll be bigger stories. Like maybe within the next two bull runs, we'll see a country totally adopt Bitcoin as their main currency and drop their fiat. Maybe we'll see an even bigger country, get a lot of attention to where their money is hyperinflating, and a lot of people are turning to Bitcoin. I also think that when Bitcoin reaches another kind of order of magnitude and value, you know, once we start getting to the $100,000 Bitcoin area, I think that also is going to bring a lot more attention, and it's going to bring a lot of maybe pain into other store of value markets. So like right now, you know, for example, the U.S. market is using stocks as a major store of value in a way to kind of pump money into it, and that's where a lot of the inflation is going for the U.S. fiat. I think that stocks could see that, you know, become much more risky play, and more people move towards Bitcoin. And I think that could also happen to gold and other things traditionally known as stores of value, where you could start to see, you know, a real turnaround where the value in those things just starts plummeting and no longer goes up along with inflation, and people just start realizing that Bitcoin is like the ultimate counterbalance to inflationary money. So that's what I think we might see for Bitrefill. I don't know. We've been hiring. The team has been growing. The company has been growing. The amount of customers has been growing. Things have been really good, and I'm really, really looking forward to seeing how things progress next year. Seeing what kind of new areas we can get into as a business, and, you know, really seeing how globalizing the business and tackling, you know, all the challenges of localization and such. I'm really looking forward to seeing how that will play out. Seeing projects like Spectrum actually come to life, and seeing what people can do with that, and maybe new projects, and collaborating with more businesses. We have a lot of partnerships that we're kind of juggling and hoping will come to fruition soon. So you'll see more. You'll see more of us in the headlines, etc.
That sounds fantastic, John. I'm stoked for you to share your time with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, you can find John Carvalho on Twitter. I don't know how to, where it is. We'll leave those links down below, as Bitrefill as well. Super grateful to have you on the show. Remember, if you guys enjoy the content, give us those thumbs up. This was, again, one of the Arcane Bear family's choices. So if you guys have any other podcast guests you'd like to see, leave their names down below. And also, again, remember to follow John and Bitrefill to stay current and up to date with all the things that they're currently working on. Again, super stoked. Thank you for coming on the show and sharing your time with us today. We'll see you again soon. Hopefully, John, we'll have you back in case there's any major updates you guys see that you'd like to share with us as well.
Yeah, anytime. Thanks so much for having me.
Yes. Thank you, Arcane Bear family. We'll see you guys again. Awesome.